Welcome to the DGD Podcast, as always. Robert Reynolds, Kobe Pierce. Guys, we got a lot to talk about. So we haven't talked about the 2024 recruiting class and the targets that are in it. It could shape up to be historic. But first, Kobe, how are you doing today, sir?
We're living the dream today. Living the dream.
That sounds so much like what we used to say in the military all the time. But yeah, no, other than that, man, hey, everyone, brigade, happy Wednesday. Happy Wednesday. We're here to talk some 2024 recruiting. Kobe, I hope you're ready for it. I think the brigade should be ready for it. I know I'm ready for it. Always down for some recruiting talk. But first, the show is brought to you by our friends over at Apotheos Roastery. Check out dgdpodcast.com/Apotheos. Shop their selection. And 20% of each bag that you purchase using our link, for every single bag that you get, 20% of those proceeds will go to the Classic City Collective. Apotheos is also the official coffee and cold brew partner of the Classic City Collective, so they help with all 21 sports around the Georgia program. So do yourself a favor, check out the selection. Listen, I guarantee you, Rudes, myself, JOGG, we all vouch for this. It's the best coffee I've ever had. I love this stuff. Check them out, dgdpodcast.com/Apotheos. Kobe, with that being said, let's jump into this recruiting class, man. Obviously, Georgia is number one with 10 commits right now, right? Sitting pretty at number one. You're looking at, you've got a list of guys already. To name them off, you've got Ellis Robinson, Landon Thomas, that's a 5-star tight end. DeMarcus Riddick just actually got bumped up to a 5-star. That's a linebacker. Talk about a linebacker haul. Good Lord. Nye Carr, receiver. 2 safeties in Jalen Hayward and Peyton Woodyard. Another running back, Dwight Phillips. Keep in mind that guy right there just ran a 10.29 in the 100-meter dash. Recently committed DeMello Jones, your quarterback Ryan Puglisi, and Sokovi White, rounding out the current commits, for this cycle. But there's a lot left to go, and obviously we want to talk about these top targets. Before we get started, I do want to read some comments. So apparently, Rude says the intro makes him want to go hard in the paint on a Monday. It's Wednesday, sir. He's about to destroy his TPS report. Do it the right way. Tanil, Jeff, good morning. Good morning. We got some folks in here today. Kobe, let's go ahead and get this started. First things first, you got Ryan Puglisi in this class committed. But I think you cannot – the biggest name in this cycle period has to be Dylan Raiola, right? Coming off of a visit to Athens over this past weekend. Things went well, it sounds like. And I think you could be looking at a commitment here before the season starts. What are your thoughts on Raiola? How important is he to Georgia in this 24 cycle?
Yeah, I think that it'll be interesting to see, like you're saying, will he follow kind of the new trend of college football, if you will? And that's that, these quarterbacks, a couple of these, big time cornerstone, keystone kind of guys for your class, they don't take as long to commit. They kind of get an idea where they're going to go. They get an idea of, what coaches they like, what schemes they like. And, they kind of find a home early. I think last year, we were talking about that, like, out of the top 25 quarterbacks in the class, or out of the top 30, 25 of them were committed before like August 1st or September 1st. Like, people had homes. And so I think it'll be interesting to see, kind of like Arch Manning did, kind of like, a couple other big time guys. If Raiola, come July 1st, July 4th, around that time after he's taken some officials over the summer and done some camping, if he finds a home. And then Raiola, I would think, like a lot of other big time quarterbacks, is once it's done, it's done. It is flip season for some guys here and there, But I feel like once a quarterback's finally kind of found their home, that they're going to be there to stay. And that'll be nice. I think we're just as much in it as anyone else. I think that Steve Wiltfong and all those guys are really making his recruitment a lot more dramatic than it has to be. I feel like every time he goes for a visit, he gets a crystal ball to that place.
I mean, Wilfong's crystal ball's changed like 4 or 5 times throughout his recruitment. Now, to his defense, he did get the first initial Ohio State commitment, correct? But then when he flipped, right, like when he decommitted from Ohio State, right, I think now at the same time you can't necessarily bash Wilfong for that. I'm not going to do that, but keep in mind that crystal balls aren't solid, right? They're not solid. Keep in mind that once the name hits the piece of paper signing that national letter of intent, that's when you can start to breathe. And it's faxed in. Starting nowadays, you got to start making sure you're getting emailed in or faxed in or however it goes. But you know what I mean, though, Kobe. You know what I mean. But no, I think you look at Raiola and you already have Puglisi. But the thing is, I think Georgia has to have 2 quarterbacks this cycle because of what we missed on in the 23 cycle, right? You go in for Arch lands at Texas. And it kind of looked like you went all in for Texas now, for Arch. And when he goes to Texas, it felt like initially you kind of lost on Raiola because of the fact that you went so hard on Arch Manning. But now that he's decommitted from Ohio State, it feels like things are opening up a little bit more. And listen, the connection right with Matt Stafford, I think that cannot go unnoticed. And the fact that Georgia's winning and winning a lot, winning titles, right? That's all important stuff right there. I saw a comment, Kobe, before I saw you about to say something. I just wanted to bring this up. It also alludes to Jeff Hightower said Justin Scott is a name. The first week of June will be a huge weekend because you got Raiola, Smith, Wingo, Scott, many more. We're going to get to some of those names, but you are absolutely right. Kobe, you had something to say, sir?
Yeah, I think that it's what we've seen so far in his crystal balls for sure. I think it's a 3-horse race for Raiola, and I think anything else is going to surprise a lot of people. But, you come to Georgia, you're one of the hottest teams on the block right now. You're back-to-back defending 2-time national champions, well on your way, like we've talked about on this podcast, to possibly going back-to-back undefeated regular seasons, making another SEC championship, going back to the playoff and trying to defend that national title for a 3rd time. It's hard to argue with that. It's hard to argue with wanting to be a leader and a member of that. And then you have Nebraska, who's, kind of to me where Kirby was in 2016 recruiting Jake Fromm of, you're trying to get the hype around what Nebraska could be and maybe once was, Matt Rule's telling you how he's going to change all these things. I'm pretty sure, didn't Raiola's dad go to Nebraska? And so
He did. Dominic did.
So you have 3 very different schools. You have the school that is there, the Alabama of old, Nebraska, who's trying to get back there and feeding, like, your dad's an alumnus, a letterman. And then you got my man out in Southern California that basically has the Heisman Trophy case and the number 1 overall picks of, you come here, you play quarterback for me, you will win a Heisman, you will be a 1st-round draft pick. If you don't care about anything else, you're going to win a lot of games out of South California too.
Yeah, and I think as long as Lincoln's there, you're going to be offensively, you're going to be probably more than stellar, in my opinion. But again, when it comes to, what does a recruit like Dylan Raiola want, right? Do they want the championships? Do they want to win that way? Do they want does he want the stats? Does he want the accolades, the Heisman, whatever? Ultimately, you got 3 different recruiting pitches, and all of them are valid, right? They're valid. They're logical. They all make sense. Ultimately, I think Dylan Raiola's recruitment is going to be one to continue to watch, and I think literally all the way up until he signs his national letter of intent and sends it in. Seeing some comments here. It looks like Juan and JWG are back at their normal selves, as always. Jeff Hightough said crystal balls equals clicks. Yeah, he's not wrong. I mean, it works. You know what I mean? Where was it? I saw Joe Huff speaking some kind words here. Becoming my favorite podcast. Look forward to every episode. Usually have to catch the replay because of work. Thanks, guys. Hey, man, thanks for the kind words. Really appreciate that. But I think Rudes also was talking about, because we posted a question, who is your top target? And we're letting the brigade answer in the comments. And I think Rudes had mentioned running backs. And I think it's a good time to transition from quarterback to running back because you already have Dwight Phillips committed. And I think he's a burner. And I think he's going to be a really good addition to this backfield. You know, you're getting ready to lose Kendall Milton. You're more than likely going to lose Dejon Edwards as well. So the need for two backs, I think, is crucial in this cycle, right? And Dwight Phillips, you know, I think is one perfect addition. You know, everybody's talking Jarrett Gibson. I just don't see him coming here. But if I had to choose my top target for the running back class, I'm looking at a current Florida State commit, Cam Davis. Cam Davis is a dog. Like, that kid is good. He's going to be an elite collegiate runner, in my opinion. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I was about to hammer the same thing. You know, he's a South Georgia boy. You know, I'm pretty sure he's at Darty. And I've known about him since he was a freshman at Darty. I mean, he was running quarterback down there, winning games single-handedly. Anybody that's ever played in that area of the state just knows that the Albany schools typically have one really, really star, maybe, you know, two or three really star athletes, and then a lot of average to below average football players. And he's the kind of guy that was beating people by himself. You know, no O-line, no defense, but Cam Davis running for 350 and beating your team. He's been a long time Florida State commit. I think he committed when he was like a sophomore.
He's been committed for a hot minute at this point.
But there's always that pressure of, again, do you want to go to an up and coming like Florida State, who is still like, yes, they will compete for the ACC this year, but on a national stage, will they compete? Or do you want to come here at a school that, you know, kids don't always think about this, but if you ask Zamir, if you ask, you know, Nick Chubb, if you ask a couple of the guys that have been here, running by committee saves you in the long term so much more for the NFL. You know, there's a lot to be said about not being a horse at your college and being able to split reps when need be.
Look at the value, guys. Look at the lifespan and the value of running backs currently in the NFL. It's not long. They are not projected to last long, right? So if you have the opportunity to come into a collegiate running back room, preserve yourself so that in the end your NFL career could be sustained more long term. How is that not beneficial? I think that has to be Georgia's recruiting pitch. It has to be. Roots is all up in the comments. Geologists are still trying to confirm the exact dates of game tape. Oh boy. Listen, if you're listening on podcast, when we bring up these comments, I'm sorry, but it's doing yourself a disservice. Obviously, we love and appreciate the support through audio and the podcast platforms, but some of these comments are just over the top from the brigade. So we try to relay that to you. But as we get back into the running back situation, though, Kobe, are there any other names? Is there another name that sticks out to you in the running back class this cycle that could and would be a good target for Georgia to go get?
I think at this point, I think he is – a lot of your chips are going to be down on him. I'm looking through the top kind of 20 guys.
You might see Jason Brown, maybe.
Yeah.
Don't know how to feel about that, but that's another one you could look at for sure.
This guy right here, Mekhi Danzy, he's from Tallahassee, Florida.
Mhm.
Like, he's a 4-star. He's the 15th ranked running back in his class. Like, guys like that. I feel like sometimes Dale kind of will go outside the state and get somebody random on you.
Yeah.
You just never know. He's so good on, like, they find their guy, and it's the same reason, like we talked about, the guy that just decommitted. What was it, Mizell?
Yeah, Tavani Mazzell, yeah.
Yeah, he's a 29th ranked running back according to 247.
I feel like he dropped, though. At one point, he was higher than that, though, I thought.
He's a 3-star running back according to 247. He's not even nationally ranked.
Well, now, if you go composite, though, he's 276 overall. So I don't know which service it is. But, yeah, I mean, for me, everybody has their preference. I go composite, even though I don't care for ESPN recruiting rankings. They're garbage.
But just saying, I mean, if we're taking commitments from him, then there's no telling who ahead of him you may find that you like or that likes us that you're happy with. But I think you're going to see Dwight Phillips. You already have, and I think you're going to see a huge push for Cameron Davis. And
we're not knocking Tavani at all. So please,
no, not at all.
We're not knocking.
I'm just saying that Dale finds his diamonds in the rough. I'm saying,
I mean, you look at it,
undervalued probably compared to.
I mean, when you look at like the 23 cycle, right? Like, we push for Justice Haynes. Justice Haynes kind of surprises everybody, goes to Bama. Then it's what feels and reality are different here, in my opinion, but to some degree they're correlated. It feels like you go last ditch effort to go pick up Roderick Robinson. But Roderick Robinson is not a running back that is any slouch by any means. So it's like, Georgia's at a standpoint now where your fallback option is still an elite running back. And to me, that's just nuts to believe, but welcome to the current state of Georgia football, especially at the running back position. All right, let's see. Pat is calling for Juan. Ask if he's getting fitted for a jersey. A la Stetson Bennett. The more to talk about later when that comes around. Kobe, I think the receiving position, right? We'll kind of go this right here. The receiving core is going to be one where I think you could see 4 receivers, maybe 5, depending on the right one comes in, gets basically put into this class. Ultimately, my question to you, though, I think it all starts with Ohio State commit Jeremiah Smith. That kid is arguably, or not even arguably, excuse me, hands down the best receiver in this class, in my opinion. Does Georgia have a legitimate chance to land Jeremiah Smith, in your opinion?
Like we've talked about, it's the same reason that Ohio State has so many good receivers, same reason that Clemson for a while was getting so many good receivers, the same reason Alabama was getting so many good receivers. There is correlation between getting good top-tier quarterback recruits and getting good top-tier receivers. I mean, they are the same side of one coin. You don't get the 11th best quarterback and 2 top 10 receivers. That's just not how it really works.
Yeah, it doesn't. There's no correlation in that regard.
Yeah. So, like, for Ohio State, Dylan Raiola, obviously number 1 quarterback recruit, all this. He's at Ohio State. Well, boom, number 1 receiver. Man, I would really like to play with the number 1 quarterback. He's going to throw me the ball. I know we're going to be able to grow together. This is going to be a good guy for a long time. Well, so then he's at Ohio State. Yeah, offense may have a little bit to do with it. Ohio State's throwing the ball a good bit. But if you land Raiola, you will land probably 2 top 10 receivers. And I think Jeremiah Smith is a legitimate option of being one of those guys. Rude's with Missouri, with their wide receiver, getting Luther Burden. That's just a hometown thing. I mean, that's just kind of random, like you're saying.
That was definitely a wild.
We tried pretty hard for Luther, and I think a lot of other schools did too. And at the end of the day, he just really wanted to be in Missouri, which you got to respect that at some point. You're from Missouri. I respect staying home. You can't be mad at that. So
Yeah, you're not wrong at all. I mean, welcome to the world of NIL too. I think sometimes NIL and home field, hometown situations can come in, but I think it's more of an exception to the rule.
But looking
knocking.
right here, Mike Matthews is from Parkview in Georgia. He's number 4 recruit or number 4 wide receiver according to 247, but number 2 composite. It looks like he's 5-star. He's number 10 nationally. Like,
yeah,
he would be a perfect example of like if you got Raiola, boom, there's a in-state guy you've kept home to be a 5-star receiver.
So, and Georgia hasn't had the guy, right, since AJ Green, I would say, like, especially at the receiver position. I mean,
Landon George was huge.
Well, Landon George was huge, but what I mean by that, it was like the production to follow. Not saying that he didn't have a huge impact. It's just the sample size wasn't as much, like a full 3 seasons due to injuries, things like that.
Yeah, but I mean,
when he was there, he was on it.
And we had like little to no idea we were getting George either.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite signing, especially flipping him from Auburn. That was one of my favorite signing day flips. Period. But no, I mean, when you look at that though, right? Like, you have the current offense we've seen under Bobo, right? Like, I think that's another thing. How many receivers are obviously looking for Raiola's commitment and where that goes. Also, to see what Georgia's offense is going to look like under Mike Bobo, right? Now that you've got a different, Mike Bobo 2.0 per se, like how that plays out, I think could really be telling. But the thing is, though, keep in mind, I think receivers also kind of see the quarterback room for what it's worth, because Georgia has, in my opinion, one of the best quarterback rooms in the country, right? I'd say 3 capable quarterbacks, right? Whether it be Carson Beck, Gunner, or Brock, I don't think there's going to be an issue there. Obviously you still got the talent around it and everything like that. So if the offense clicks and does well, there's a good chance that you can get these guys to come and say, look, come and be the guy, right? Talk to Jeremiah Smith. Hey, come and be the guy. All right, Mike Matthews, come and be the guy. And I think that could be a nice recruiting pitch for Georgia. But you can't tell me that Jeremiah Smith has to be one of the biggest targets, even if he's already committed, on your radar for Georgia in the receiving corps.
The hardest thing about all this is, at this point in his career, and not saying he's proud or anything, but there's the Georgia way, and there's the kind of recruits he's looking for. You have to be willing to do more than just run a pretty go ball and score a lot of touchdowns to play receiver at the University of Georgia. It's why, I mean, even George had to learn it. I mean, you look at all the clips of him shoving down DBs and blocking DBs and doing those things. Like, yeah, they're funny, but when he got here, he learned how to block. He learned that it was important to block. It's what makes Darnell such a good asset. Bowers is going to be a great asset.
Marcus Rosemy is another one I think he's benefited.
I mean, there's a reason like these guys get rewarded with those balls. Ladd McConkey. I mean, you see Ladd. He's out there. He's 5'10", 185 pounds. He's blocking guys to the best of his ability, blocking them great. Those are the egos and the stars you're going to have to get over. If you're – I'm not going to say number one guy necessarily because I don't know him personally. So I don't know what he's like. But you have to be willing to come and say, when I'm not getting the ball, I'm willing to do whatever it takes for our team to succeed. Or am I going to be mad that I'm not getting the ball?
Well, that was one thing that I saw that kind of as George came about, right, from freshman year to junior year. If you notice, like, it looked like if the ball wasn't coming his way, he kind of took plays off on the backside, and it kind of cost Georgia at times. Whereas, his junior year when he was playing, you could see the effort even on plays that were going away from him, right? Like the blocking, right? Like there were some times where he would like jog off the line or something like that, and it cost Georgia, right? Ultimately, like the guy that he was supposed to block ended up making the play. Now now that makes sense, and you see that on tape, and it makes you like, all right, now I understand the importance of doing things, right? Like even when the ball's not coming to me. So ultimately, right, you look at these guys, excellent ball skills, right, route running, but again, the willingness to block. It's the willingness. It's not the ability. It's the willingness as well that could separate, guys playing at Georgia compared to other schools. But that's just my thought. Tight ends, Kobe. Tight ends. Obviously, 23 cycle. Get Pierce. Prayers up there on a speedy recovery there from a collarbone injury. And then Lawson Lucky. And then now you look at the 24 cycle. You've got Landon Thomas. That's a 5-star tight end. You also, I think if there's any other target that you get in this cycle from a tight end perspective, if you get another one, I think you try to go for Caleb Odom out of Carrollton. And I will explain why. He is one of the receivers, right? Obviously a tight end, but he is one of the passing options for a 2026 quarterback that you're going to go hard after and is a must hit in that class, and that is Juju Lewis. If you can land Caleb Odom, that might be a good start to getting Juju Lewis down the line. What say you about that?
It's always a chess game, is what I'll always say, and I agree with you. You break into that Carrollton. It's kind of like we're talking about with Juan, and we've talked about it, that the Dogs haven't been able to crack into that Buford shell in a long time and get high-end recruits out of Buford. Seems like we lose them, somewhere. Either is it the coaching staff, is it, somebody in their ear, whatever. But, you just look at this year, you lost a couple, Buford guys to Alabama. It just seems like you can't quite keep them home. And so anytime you can go into a school like Carrollton, go in somewhere that down the line, like, yeah, we have somebody, then, getting Caleb Odom, getting him here, it just kind of shows and gives an end to Juju where he has that little bug in his ear saying, hey, you're really going to love it up here. The city's great. The town's great. The downtown atmosphere is great. Workouts are tough. Practice is tough, but we're getting better and we're winning games. And that can go a long way for anybody. Just to have a friend or someone, that understands what you're about to go through and can kind of let you know, hey, make sure your cardio's up because we're running a lot or whatever, just little things. So it would be an impressive keep to get another back-to-back top 5 tight ends. But I think it's kind of the way you're going. The more you continue to use Brock Bowers, the more you'll use Oscar Delp this year, with Lawson, and you'll have the other tight end back from the collarbone injury. You're going to keep getting top 5 tight ends.
Yeah, as long as Todd Hartley's here, I think that, the Mountie, right? The Mountie will always get his man. And that is one of the most important things to keep in mind. Todd Hartley will always get his man. That's why he is called the Mountie around these parts. Just my opinion there. But if, sometimes you see teams will go for a kid to land a bigger kid at the same, right? Like teammates, things like that. But Caleb Odom is a situation where he can come in and be a part of that tight end room and still – it's not like you're picking up a unwanted or unneeded player to get him. It's not going to just take up a spot.
This is a top 70 recruit in his class. This would be a good tight end to get as your number 1 tight end in your class. Let alone as the second tight end you picked up in your class. I'm just saying, looking.
Yeah, because so the 24/7 composite has Caleb Odom as the 8th best tight end, ranked 126 nationally, according to the composite. Again, that's still – think about where Brock Bowers was, right? Just outside the top 100, right? I'm not comparing the two, but you get what I mean. Right? Landon Thomas is your 5-star, but what does that mean, though? It also means that you're locking down the state, keeping elite talent in the state, because both of those guys – I think obviously you look at that 2 top 10 tight ends in the country, both out of the state of Georgia. If you can land both of those guys, that means you're retaining your talent within the state, building upon a deeper tight end room than anyone in the country. What a problem to have, right? What a problem to have. And
I'll be honest with you, right now I don't know what Caleb Odom's official 40 is. Let's click on him, see if it'll tell me.
Let's see the last recorded time, I guess.
Will it tell me that?
If it's recorded, if are you looking at 24/7?
Yeah.
So you'll probably, if they have it recorded or they lasered it down, then it would probably be in there. But if not, you might have to just go off the tape or something. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't see it. But that being said, this is where I was going with this. He's 6'5", 205. I mean, 205 does not immediately scream to me that you're going to come here and be a tight end. I mean, he could be the kind of guy that is that, hybrid type, big body receiver that we like to have all those years.
I mean, he could. So what you're saying is you could see a possibility of him transferring, transitioning into more of a pure receiver, and legitimately have that kind of body size.
I mean, he could just be a bona fide pass catcher. I mean,
that's the perk. That's the perks of. And listen, like we talked about this, right? And depending on how the receiving class falls, right, how those dominoes fall, right, you have to see that there could be a potential for something like this to happen, and it's not the craziest thing that could happen. It legitimately makes sense because I feel like he's an excellent pass catcher. But when you look at what we need on the line of scrimmage in the line, 205 is not going to get it done. You have to bulk up to 230, 240 or beyond. And that's asking a lot, especially with how Georgia runs, for conditioning and stuff. It's hard to keep weight like that. It's hard to put weight on when you're running so much. So you could honestly see a transition from the tight end position to a receiver, depending on how the chips fall in the receiving class. That's just my thoughts. Kobe, we've talked about these skill positions, but let's get down to the nitty-gritty and talk these hogs in the trenches. Offensive line. I feel like it's a huge priority in this cycle, but I want to get your thoughts overall on that and give me your top target for 2024 in the offensive line.
I mean, I'd like to see us get back into the, and I thought we did a good job of Monroe Freeling. I'd like to see us get back to the Sam Pittman way of doing things and getting some of these top guys in the house. We had some years there where we had way too many bodies, and I'm not saying that we're going to be fully flushed of all the bodies again, but if you're really thinking 2024 is a huge year for offensive line, you're going to lose, probably without a shadow of a doubt, both guards, your center, and at least one tackle.
And possibly, listen, the crazy thing is you could honestly see your backup guards leave as well, depending on how the season goes.
Yeah.
Right? Because, I mean, let's be honest. Because we expect Cedric Van Pran, you expect Tate Ratledge, you're going to lose Amarius Mims more than likely, right? So you're losing a lot. You'll have guys like Ernest Green and Monroe Freeling in there. If you keep these guys in, you could see Fairchild take over. You could see Michael Morris, Austin Blasky could all play key parts next year.
But now we're talking about Blasky's been taking first-team left tackle reps.
Yeah, so you never know. So obviously when you look at the situation, right, Georgia seems to be hoarding guards. But when it comes to offensive line, you have to get several this class, and you have to hit on them. You can't miss, right? You can't miss on the evaluation. I think that's the biggest part here. My top target in regards to offensive line play, or from an offensive line perspective, is a guy right up in Marietta, Georgia, out of Walton, Daniel Calhoun. There, you have Cam Pringle that's above him. You have Guire B. Lambert, that's above him. So he's third or fourth best tackle, I guess you should say, offensive line. But I still think you have to look at Calhoun keeping the talent in state. And I feel like if you can land him, obviously you get some other pieces there, right? But, I mean, if you really take a look at Calhoun, 6'6.5", 355, more than likely you're going to see him play guard, right? But that's a key foundation. But if you have him playing tackle, like a smaller DeJuan James per se, more athletic DeJuan James from Ohio State, you've got yourself a road grader and the foundation for your offensive line moving forward. There's no doubt about
that. And I think, there's just going to be some guys that we're still talking about that they're not – it's not over with. I mean, the top guy, Brandon Baker, I don't think that he's a lost cause if you recruit him. Cam Pringle, he's committed to South Carolina, but I don't think he is. It's outside of the realm to think that we will not still be recruiting him. I got a guy up there near you that I like transitioned to offensive tackle recently. He won't be, the bona fide 5-star tackle, but he's more a project pick that I would like, kind of like a Drew Bobo, somebody like that of, Egan Boyers up there near you. To me, he'd be a huge pickup. He transitioned from tight end to tackle, maybe like a year or two ago. 6'7". He's like 265, maybe 270 now. He's actively putting on weight. That's the kind of guy that transition happens, and you kind of get hot on him early in his recruitment. Yep. And he comes here, he gets to 310, 315. He could be a guy that could play a lot of snaps for you. He's getting a lot of offers right now too. So
you also have got guys like Jimothy Lewis. I don't know how much of a shot Georgia has. That's the one that you could look at. There's another one, Josiah Thompson out of Dillon, South Carolina. He's announced his commitment for the 11th of April. Now, if you follow Crystal Balls, the projection there is South Carolina, but I think Georgia's got a good shot there as well. I think Georgia's got a shot with about anybody, if we're being serious. Just going to leave that there. But I do think that regardless who you pick up, you want to make sure that you hit. I don't think this is the cycle to just pick up an offensive lineman for a project. I think you need these guys to make, have a purpose. I don't think you just grab a guy for a project and try to see what happens.
Well, you always, I feel like you're always going to grab a couple projects at the end to kind of round out your class. It just kind of is how, not necessarily projects, but like you always seem to scoop up a late 3-star here or there, kind of, around the 400, 500 rankings. And it just kind of gives you an extra body, and it lets you kind of gamble on how they're going to turn out. Because, like you're saying, you could really – the offensive line room this year could be decimated. If people start doing the math and they're, upcoming juniors and not playing, or, upcoming sophomores and don't see a road to playing, not only could the draft hurt you this year, but the portal. There are guys in that room that have been there a long time that haven't seen the light of the field, and they may be thinking that they're getting recruited over, and they're about to bounce.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And it's not just that, like, Georgia has so much talent here. Other schools see that, though. Like, these guys could go and play and start and play meaningful snaps at most other schools, even in the SEC.
Well, you just look at, like, and this is just a name and a thought, but like Scroggs, he was committed to Georgia Tech before he committed here.
He was going. I wouldn't be surprised if he was going to play significant minutes at Georgia Tech.
Now Buster Faulkner who has been here 2 years with him, has gone to Georgia Tech. That's the kind of name that it goes in the portal, and Tech might be the first phone call that he gets. I'm just saying, like, I don't know if he wants to do that at all, but I'm just saying, like, those are the kind of guys. Don't think that the guys that aren't playing wouldn't be, getting phone calls from here. We got a guy that when I played, he was a top 10 tackle from JUCO, DeMarcus Hayes, and he committed here, came here. Man, barely made the travel squad some weeks. Some weeks he was at the house with us watching the game. And he's starting left tackle in the XFL. Yes, it's just the XFL, but he's starting left tackle.
Yeah.
He didn't even play here. He didn't play a single significant snap here. Like, that's the kind of depth you have at these schools that people don't realize.
No doubt. Let's transition over to the defensive side of the ball. And this is where we need the expertise of Juan the GOAT Daniels. But if we're looking at defensive line, right, I look at defensive line as, again, another cycle where you just load up and reload. But there's a couple of names at the very, very tip top, and I'm gonna go 3. I'm gonna go 1, 2, 3, and Georgia's in on them heavy. And if you land all 3 of these, you talk about being elite on the defensive line. it becomes scary if all three of these guys come to Georgia. First off, Williams Nwaneri out of Lee Summit, Missouri. 8th overall in the country, just came off of a visit, said he will be setting up an official to Georgia. You've got one of Juan's guys, the Buford boys, Eddrick Houston. That is, in my opinion, on the defensive line, the must get in this class, period. Must get him, because that will you've got Prolati in the 25 class. But if you can pick up Houston, right, if you can pick up Eddrick Houston out of Buford, that's going to change things on how you recruit that school, in my opinion. And then you also have, that we alluded to earlier, Justin Scott out of Chirac, if you will, Chicago, Illinois. All three of these guys can come in and be significant pieces to this defensive line haul. Outside of those three, I don't know, I probably took your thunder there. Outside of those three, I think, what are some other possibilities that you see, potentially landing here, or, who is that must-get guy for you, Kobe?
I mean, I agree. Houston out of Georgia is definitely a guy that I think we're going to be super interested in, is somebody that we're going to try to recruit hard. Names to keep an eye on, David Stone, defensive lineman. I think that he'd be a big body, he's number 4, depending on what you're looking at. He's number 6 composite, number 4, 247. I think he's a good player. And then T.A. Cunningham's a name. He's a guy that I know we've had on campus a good bit. He's from out in California. We got the guy that we have the California-Nevada connection now. Don't be surprised if we start pulling a couple guys out of that area more often than we were able to before. He's a 4-star guy. He's the 14th best. But he's 6'5", 270. I mean,
yeah,
he's a solid kind of guy. And then always count on, and I wish you could do it this way. I don't know if you can. Look for somebody that's 6'7", 285, 295. Coach Scott's always going to go get him a big boy, like a big, tall, long. Look at Jordan Davis.
Look at it.
He's not here anymore, but you look at Sean Washington. You look at even Jamal. Jamal's not a small man. He came in weighing 360.
Here's a couple. I'm going to read a couple of these guys off, and I'm going to read their measurables. I think Georgia on the defensive side of the ball can go get, hey, you're huge, you're fast. We want you because we can develop you. Here's a couple of names. They're not even ranked. A couple of these guys are not even ranked right now, Kobe. Makai Boyro out of Creekside in Fairburn, 6'5", 350. Aiden Lynch out of Flanders, New Jersey. That's Fran Brown territory, 6'7", 283. And then if you want to go, and you want to go somebody that's actually got a ranking, LJ McCray, D-line, 6'6", 260, out of Daytona Beach, Florida, 148th overall. Those are just some of these guys that you might be able to look at and say, maybe they're not going to come to Georgia, right? But do you take a shot and evaluate them at least? Very well, if you got avatars that are that big. Now, I obviously haven't done enough research to see, all right, they're big, but are they fast? But sometimes guys just that big can eat up space. You don't have to be as fast as others. But if they have the combination of size and speed, I guarantee you Trey Scott's going to come calling. It's just my thought.
His thing is he's looking for massive individuals, big humans that are going to be able to eat up 2 blocks and keep your linebackers free. Eddrick Houston, 6'3". I mean, that is the lowest. That's probably the shortest guy that we are going to be recruiting at the university.
The thing about it is Eddrick's so good that it's kind of like Quay Rusal last year, where Rusal was kind of on the smaller end of what we really want to go for because we have parameters now that we recruit at size-wise. Eddrick Houston's too good not to get him in your class and play him.
I 100% agree. I'm just saying for everybody.
Yeah, no, I got you.
Everybody listening, 6'3", like if you read like Timon Mitchell, great player, wonderful defensive lineman, playing at TCU. Timon's all of 6'1". Love you, Timon, if you're listening to this for some random reason. he wasn't ever playing here. He's not long enough. He's not, all those things that we want. He was a phenomenal player. He was great when he was here as a guy, as a freshman, maybe as even a sophomore. But he needed to go somewhere else to be able to play. It's the scheme we run.
It's really what's being asked of the defense now, especially on the D line. Your edge rushers. Nolan Smith, if he was recruited in this cycle, wouldn't probably come here at all. Like, love Nolan to death, right? I think he's a DGD by everybody's account, but his size, and if you're looking at it, if he's not the number one overall guy, I don't necessarily know if he comes. Obviously, I'm appreciative that he did, but does he even get looked at and nowadays knowing what we're looking for? Like, that starts to become the question. Now, the speed, I think you can't question the speed.
He's the wrong example. I mean, he was number one recruit in his class.
Yeah. I mean,
but just look from a size standpoint. I understand what you're saying, but he was number one overall recruit for a while.
See, so Juan's saying that you should see Houston in person. Yeah, I know. We need to get him on the show somehow. Juan, pull some strings, maybe. I mean, Juan's the GOAT, so he can make it happen. Maybe. I mean, like, he can make bread turn into wine and make us happy.
And again, Juan, if you're listening, obviously not a knock against Houston, just purely the measurable of 6'3". You're asking an interior defensive lineman here to do a lot.
No, he's gonna be he's a take. There's no question. But it's like an exception to the rule now. Ultimately, let's move over to linebackers code. Excuse me.
Let's do outside linebackers, like edge guys.
Edge guys. All right. Do you want to start with that? Name some folks.
I think we've had Colin Simmons here a time or two. Obviously, he's the number one guy at Duncanville. I think he's coming back for another official sometime in the summer. It'd be great to get a top edge rusher. I mean, obviously your sacks have depleted the past few years. After that, I haven't heard a bunch of these names as far as like hear a lot, I guess. But like Dylan Stewart, I would say would be the other name I've heard the most.
I think Dylan Stewart's a must get, especially knowing how important and how much of a commodity elite pass rushing is, right? Like, just think, like, we've got Damon Wilson, we've got Marvin Jones Jr., but you can't ask Michael Williams at a plan of 4-eye to get 10 sacks. That's hard as hell to think about and do. So if you start to look at these commodities on the edge as gold, like you look at Dylan Stewart, I think Dylan Stewart, you might see a guy like Booker Pickett, right? 6'3", 200, again, on the smaller size. Don't necessarily say you land them. Excuse me. Ooh. But if you look at guys like, Colin Simmons, I think it's going to be hard to pull out of Texas, though, man. It's just where I'm seeing now. Do you go for a guy like – do you have a shot with a guy like Elijah Rushing? Or can you flip – I don't know if you can, but could you flip a TJ Capers, even though Capers is 6'2", right? Like, but Elijah Rushing at 6'6".
I thought Capers was an inside guy.
They got him listed as an edge. I mean, I feel like he's just, again, on that smaller size that we talk about, right?
I mean, he's the same size as Quay Walker.
Yeah. I'll tell you this, though.
230.
Here's another name, and I think people need to pay attention to this guy. Out of England, Emmanuel Okoye, 6'5", 230. Kid is an athletic freak. Again, you start to look at what Glenn Schumann and company wants on the out. Dude, they want avatars to just be able to run real fast. You know what I mean? It'd be super long. It works. And that's another guy that I think, I think at the end of the day, I think you could have a shot there with a guy like Okoye. I really think if you haven't paid attention and checked him out, do yourself a favor. You'll understand why. Kid's a freak. All right, we'll move on to the inside backers now, Kobe. These true linebackers, if you'd like to. Obviously, you've got DeMarcus Riddick already in the fold.
Yep.
And I think me and you are both going to say this one name because I think you only get 2 linebackers in this class, considering what you just grabbed. Sammy Brown. Is that your thought?
It is. But for the first time in a long time, I'm gonna tell you I'm doubtful. Like
Oh.
I just don't I don't see it. I will be as shocked as I've ever been probably about us getting a recruit if we land Sammy Brown.
Because he's a freak too. He's an athletic freak too. But I know it's going to be him. It's going to be Clemson and Georgia, in my opinion. And I feel like, Clemson's relationships have been a huge thing for him. Right?
If he would have been the only linebacker in this class, like if he'd have committed 2 months ago and we wouldn't have taken another, then I could have seen it. But I just don't know. I just don't know. I mean, I don't know. Obviously, still don't know him. But I think Clemson just looks very appealing at this point.
No, you're not right. I think from a top target standpoint, though, if he wants to come to Georgia, you're going to let him in this class. There's no question about that. There's no question about that.
There's not a guy on this 247 website that if you're ranked 1 in your position, that we're going to tell you no. I mean,
yeah, exactly. So I mean, if he wants to come to Georgia, you let him in. But to your point, I kind of get your point because, again, you look at what Glenn Schumann brought in, right? You look at Raylan Wilson and Pemba and all these guys, these linebackers, right? Troy Bowles, Raylan Wilson, C.J. Allen, all three of those guys right before you. There's that chance of, do you get buried? And be even number one over, like even though in your position, number one overall, you still have that doubt. But if you go to Clemson, and this is why I get your point, because if he goes to Clemson, he's going to be the guy. And you probably see him play like Isaiah Simmons did at Clemson too.
You're Ben Boulware for 4 years.
Three or 4 years, however you want to look at it now.
Just a maniac tackling machine that,
Mean machine.
I mean, Clemson, you're going to have, I guess, like, again, it's kind of like running back. Do you want to be the guy that's in every play? You have 100 tackles a year at Clemson. Or do you want to be like Nakobe and Quay and Channing and all these guys that are going to get drafted, but they only got like 65 tackles a year? Pop. I mean, people are like, why is Pop in the running for the Dick Butkus? He only has 62 tackles. It's like, we're rotating.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean he's not one of the best linebackers in the country, but we rotate. It's what we do. It's part of the depth. But another name to keep an eye on, and it just is like a name that I recognize, is Quay Birdsong from Troup County. That name for some reason clicks. So he's from Georgia, 6'2", 200 pounds, kind of fits that mold. If you do miss on Sammy Brown and end up taking a second linebacker with DeMarcus Riddick, which I've also heard, he's going to be kind of one of those it's not over till it's over kind of commits possibly.
Yep.
So, I mean,
ultimately, I get your point. There's a good chance you might see one, but if you get a second one, it's going to be Sammy Brown, I would think. Like you're going to hold a spot for him if he wants it, but if not, you just get that one and then look at the 25 cycle. I would assume at that point. So what we're going to do for this last one, we're going to look at the entire secondary, and you'll understand why. Obviously, at cornerback, you have Ellis Robinson committed. And then at safety, right now, you've already got Peyton Woodyard and Jalen Hayward. Now, the interesting thing is your top target in the secondary is KJ Bolden. All three of those guys are listed as safeties. Now, the reason why I combined those was for this. When you take a look at the safeties, I feel like you don't grab three safeties unless you look at maybe transition one over to a star or maybe even a cornerback, right? What are your thoughts on the fact that you could land three safeties and maybe one or maybe two cornerbacks? What are your thoughts on that?
It's right back to, this is really the year, like when you just start talking about years that you should have good runs, like you're getting into another one of those years of, like we've talked about, the whole offensive line is going to be gone after this year. Your number one tight end is going to be gone. There's going to be a lot more turnover this time next year than there is right now. Kind of like there was 2 years ago. You're legitimately talking about, Starks will have to come back. But I mean, Dan Jackson could be gone. Tyke Smith could be gone. Kamari Lassiter could be gone. A couple of those guys that, if a couple of those guys that don't win the second cornerback battle, they could be gone in May. I mean,
you could see him hit the portal too.
You could see a guy like Julian Humphrey gone. You could see a guy, you could really decimate this kind of like the offensive line room. This DB room is teetering on a point of, well, I'm still kind of here to see if I make it. Bullard will be a junior. He could be gone. There's just all these guys that all of a sudden you've poured these years into that either could transfer or could go to the NFL within the next year. So, yeah, I 100% could see why you would take, 2 safeties. I don't think you'll end up taking 3. That's just
my thing is
opinion on the KJ Bolden situation.
Yeah.
But 2 safeties and 3 cornerbacks, I don't think you'll bat an eye, and I don't think you'll overflood your DB room doing that.
See, because my thing is with the safety position, you can take safeties and revert them to cornerbacks if you need to, right, based off of athleticism and whatnot. Because, like I said, you've already got Jalen Hayward and Peyton Woodyard in the fold, but you're in the running for KJ Bolden and Xavier Filsame, I think, out of McKinney, Texas. Zaquan Patterson's another name that you're in on. So that's 5 that you have a shot at landing. Now, again, you look at the safety room, right? Like, for instance, right, you look at DeMello Jones is listed as a safety. So that's ultimately 3 safeties right now. If you get some of these guys, you could see some transition into cornerback. I think DeMello might actually play cornerback, by the way, just listed as a safety. So, again, I think you could see some rotation from what listed as and move them to cornerback if you need to.
And you can't forget either, and I was just thinking about the corner situation, that a lot of the athletes were looking for kind of that way too, like Aaron Butler. I'm pretty sure the guy from
that's another
California
name.
This committed, or he's not committed, but he's crystal balled here. But those are names that float around. Like, if he comes here, he's probably going to be a cornerback.
Ultimately, though, I think overall, right, this class has the chance to be historic. I think at the end of the day, I'm going to go ahead and make a shot here. At the end of the day, this will be the highest ranked class in Georgia history, and you're probably pushing ever. I don't know if you're going to get the $30 million class, if you're going to knock that off, but I think Georgia's going to put themselves into a damn good shot to do it.
You land Raiola, and you're well on your way.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
You land Raiola, it's the Justin Fields effect. It's the same influx that anybody has. You land Raiola, all of a sudden you land a second 5-star tight end, you land 2 5-star wide receivers, you end up keeping, randomly you keep Sammy Brown or something crazy. And all of a sudden you're looking around, you got 8 5-stars, and you're like, okay,
here we go. Yeah. Ultimately, though, so obviously there's a lot to indulge here, so we hope that you understand everything. These are just our targets and guys that we think should and get would be nice to have in this class. I think it's going to be historic. Kobe, I'm assuming you think the same. Also, before we wrap this thing up, I do want to make sure we posted on Twitter, Instagram, Friday. Kendra Harrison, 2026 tight end / defensive end athlete, if you will, up here out of Reedsville. We'll be doing a live show there, taking some questions, doing a kind of a Q&A, AMA type thing. So there's you an extra show for the week. I'll be running that. Kobe, if you want to hop on, feel free. But we're going to have Kendra on. And listen, that's a Georgia target, going to be down in Athens for G-Day. The kid is a monster. And I'll give you a quick synopsis before we wrap this thing up. 6'7", 230, and he's a freshman. He's out of the 26 class. And his favorite player is Darnell Washington. But we'll talk more about that Friday. Kobe, sir, have yourself a good day. I think,
yes, sir.
We're going to have ourselves a great day. All right. The brigade was elite today, coming in with all these Juan jokes. Go back. I got to go back and read them. I might make a collage or something to read them off. We got carried away with recruiting talk. But with that being said, brigade, thank you as always. Juan, I can't wait to have you back on the show. It feels like forever to get Rob and the gang back officially.
Joel completely ignored my message earlier too.
Oof.
I'm gonna read it because we didn't get to enjoy it. Where did it go? I said, Joel, you're the treasurer for this podcast, correct? I said, we really need to fire your ass. Who approved all this paid time off for Juan? Because it wasn't us. It wasn't us that approved all this PTO. So we're looking for Juan. At this rate, we're going to have to put out, some missing persons.
Hashtag where's Juan?
Yeah.
We'll find him, and hopefully he'll be back on.
Feels like the summer scavenger hunt that we do here, the Find Kirby.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Oh, man. With that being said, though, guys, have a great day. Enjoy your weekend. Make sure to tune in Friday at noon. Kendra Harrison coming on and talking and answering your questions. Looking forward to that. And with that being said, have a great day and go Dogs.